What's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power, and I thought a really interesting topic for today's video would be this tweet that a lot of the big bodybuilding social media pages are talking about right now from Chris Bumstead. And I think the cool thing about this is this comes in the wake of the announcement from Urs Kalecinski, which it seems like a lot of the classic physique guys, including Chris, have really rallied behind Urs after his announcement that he's no longer going to be competing in classic physique. He's switching to open bodybuilding. He feels like the weight limit is too restrictive for him, and we now know that he's doing both the Italy show and the Germany show. Very serious about trying to earn his open bodybuilding qualification at the Olympia. He's going to be facing some really big open bodybuilders, big-name open bodybuilders, the likes of Sergio Oliva Jr., Quint Beastwood, Lewis Breed, Mark Hector, Emir Omaragic, Roberto Bonomo. And a lot of people, myself included, think that Urs is a legitimate threat in these lineups. And it's kind of opened up this discussion going back to this tweet that everybody's talking about, supposedly from Chris Bumstead. I went on X and I looked at the page. It looks like a relatively new page. It doesn't have a check mark, but everybody's saying that it is actually Chris. So I'm assuming that it is. But either way, it's an interesting mental exercise here. It says, hot take. If every classic competitor moved to the open class with a good offseason, the Olympia top 10 would look a lot different. So I think an interesting thing for this video would be if you look at the classic physique lineup right now, who would your guys' picks be to crack the top 10? Let's not just say, top 3, top 6. Just make an impact in the top 10. Who would be the most likely to do that? I'll give you mine. You give me yours in your comments below. First, I think we should look at the top 10 of the Open Olympia from last year, just to get an idea of who we think might be getting knocked out here and who we think could move in if they were a classic physique competitor that switched to open with a very full, extensive offseason. So you look at this top 10. Samson Dowda first, Hadi Chupin second, Lunsford in third, Martin Fitzwater fourth, Andrew Jack fifth, Hunter Labrada in sixth. He's not going to be there this year, so he's kind of out of the conversation. William Bonac 7, Raphael Brandau 8, Brandon Curry 9, and Akeem Williams in 10. So I guess the first question is, you look at this top 10, and again, we're kind of counting Hunter Labrada out here. Is there room for a classic physique guy in this top 10? I think that's just the right off the bat question. I think the answer to that question is yes, at least one. I personally think we're talking more about the 8, 9, and 10 spots than anything else. Potentially there could be one breakout guy that's first call out. So I'm going to give you guys my first pick, and I'm not really going to count this officially because he's technically retired. He's no longer competing, but I think the obvious first pick for the number one guy that I think would make a giant splash in open bodybuilding and did make a pretty big splash in open bodybuilding at the Prague Pro, I think is obviously Chris Bumstead. The size, the structure, the stage presence, the prestige, the contest history, all the Olympias that he already won in his own division. What we saw from him just after really barely a few months' time prepping for that Prague Pro after he won the Classic Physique Olympia for the last time. I think without a shadow of a doubt, Chris would make the biggest impact at the Open Olympia. And I think if he were to come back and do Open, he would place the highest out of any current Classic Physique Pro if we operated under this assumption that every classic physique guy is going to be able to come over to open bodybuilding and do something at the Olympia. So Chris, I think, is the obvious number one for me, but again, kind of unofficial because he's technically retired and we might not ever see that. Aside from Chris, and we're not going to count Urs here because Urs is already making that crossover. We're going to see what happens in Italy. We're going to see what happens in Germany. But of the guys that are currently competing now, the guys that we're talking about right now at the Classic Physique Olympia, my number one pick is actually going to be Ramon Dino. I know a lot of people might say Mike Sommerfeld, but here's why. Ramon Dino gets up to these insane weights in the offseason, 265, 270-ish. These are open bodybuilding weights. But the thing is, and as you look at these recent physique updates from Ramon that we've been talking about over the last week or so, he gets up to these weights that are way above the classic physique limit with it in the back of his mind that he's still got to make weight for classic, but 265, 270-ish in the offseason. and he's probably not that or close to that right here, but he's really lean at these incredibly heavy weights for a classic guy. I think that with a proper offseason focused on open bodybuilding, I think Ramon already has the size to go to open, kind of like the situation with Urs that we're looking at right now. But I think with a proper offseason, I think size-wise, Ramon would probably be the most surprising for how big and how lean he would be as an open bodybuilder. I think that from a size standpoint of the current guys, Ramon could easily switch to open. I think he's the number one for me. I think in one off-season's time, focused on open bodybuilding, he could properly hang with the open guys, and I think he could crack top 10 at the Olympia, or at least of the guys today, I think he's got the best shot. Now, Mike Sommerfeld, I think, is the obvious next choice. I think he looks the most like a bodybuilder in the 212 sense. Now, he is significantly shorter than Ramon. And I say a lot, and a lot of people say a lot when they talk about Mike, he almost has a 212-esque physique. And that's probably about what he's weighing on the classic physique stage. On the classic physique Olympia stage, Ramon, for example, even though his cut is drastic, he can weigh up to and including 227 pounds as a classic physique pro. I believe that Mike is in either the up to and including 5'9" height category or the up to including 5'10". If he's up to and including 5'9", he can be 204, and 5'10", he could be 212. I don't think he's shorter than 5'8", so I don't think he would be in the up to and including 5'8" category. So I think he's either 204 or 212. I think he would need more than one offseason to really make an impact in open bodybuilding. But Ramon, we see these crazy offseason weights similar to what we saw with Urs, and I think he would be able to make an open impact the quickest. Mike, I think if we're talking about 212, I personally think that if Mike switched to 212 right now for this Olympia, even though obviously he's not qualified for the 212 Olympia, I think he would be first call out in the 212 Olympia this year. I think he would need a little bit more time to put on the size necessary, though, for an open Olympia. So Mike and Ramon would be my top two. I'll give you guys my third pick here. I would go with Matheus Menengate, the Brazilian guy. Size-wise, he looks very similar to Chris Bumstead. You guys might think I would go with Terrence Ruffin or Logan Franklin because I like them so much. I truly think those guys belong in classic physique. Not to say that if they tried, they wouldn't do well in open bodybuilding, but those are the type of physiques that I don't want to see added size on to that extent. I want them to stay in classic. I want them to stay within those classic guidelines and boundaries. I think that's where they excel, and that's where those type of structures really do well. But I think you take a guy that's a little bit taller, a little bit bigger like Matthias, and I know I'm saying his first name different every time. Just the phonetic reading of it just gets me every time. But I think he has the structure in the frame to hold the amount of size necessary to compete with open guys. That's why I went with Ramon over Mike, because he's a little bit taller. Mike's a little bit shorter. And I think the shorter guys that don't have as big of a frame to carry that size, they would need a little bit more than just one offseason to make a big impact at the Open Olympia. So I think Menengate would be another one. Those would probably be my top three. And I think of those three, again, we're kind of excluding Chris Bumstead. We're excluding Urs because we've already talked about Urs. He's making his open debut. I think that if Chris did it, I'll be honest, I think Chris would be first call-out. I think if Ramon did it, I would say Ramon could be as high as 7th or 8th. And maybe after a couple years of putting on the size for open, I would say Mike could also achieve the same as Ramon, maybe 7th or 8th. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys might disagree with this. I'm sure a lot of you guys might agree with this. But let me know your picks in the comments down below of the current crop of classic physique guys. Who would do the best in open bodybuilding at the Olympia this year, in your opinion, if they had a full proper offseason to prepare? I think people would be surprised by how well some of these classic guys would do in open. And I think it is worth noting, I said this a couple videos ago, but 212 and open are very similar in the sense that the only difference is the weight cap. It's the exact same judging, the exact same scoring, the exact same poses, It's all the same. The only difference is the weight. Classic Physique is different in the judging, in the poses, in the guidelines. So it's not a one-to-one transition to open. So I think for that reason, people would be surprised by how well some of these taller guys with this good structure, they've got a good frame, and they've already, some of them like Ramon have a ton of muscle and good condition. I think they would do really well in open. And honestly, Ramon is my pick because I think of the guys that we just talked about, I think he is the guy that is actually being limited by that weight limit. I think his physique suffers from that weight limit, and I think that's why he was off at last year's Olympia. And I think he would be a guy that when you remove that weight limit, his physique would really shine. Like I said, you're seeing him in the offseason at 265 plus pounds, and he's shredded to the bone. But he's got to cut another like 40 pounds to get down below 227. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power, my Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power, my secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.